So, Rada Sterling, welcome back to the Freeman Report.
Well, great to see you, James.
Yeah, it's lovely to have you back. Obviously, we've spoken, I think a few times before, haven't we, on TNT. What are you up to these days?
Well, I think it's been a little bit of a relief for me. I've been very busy with various clients in Dubai, as I'm sure everyone's seen on the headlines. But it's also been quite a change, I think, since the election last year. There's been, a lot of focus on different things. Where is the world going, and what direction is the culture heading? So we've been kind of busy looking into that and watching the mayhem as it unfolds.
Yes, some of it good, some of it a little bit worrying, I think, because I think, as we transition from, I think probably 180 degrees actually from where we were, it does create a lot of volatility, doesn't it, in politics, geopolitics, and of course, there's lots of risks with that. Even if we are moving in, hopefully, a much better direction, it still does add risk, doesn't it? Now, Rada, obviously, you're the CEO of Detained in Dubai. For those who haven't come across you before, just explain what Detained in Dubai is and why you set it up.
An organisation that assists people, largely British nationals, who run into legal troubles in the UAE and wider Gulf region. I set it up originally because a colleague of mine at Endemol was unfairly detained, and that was almost 17 years ago now. So since then, we've helped about 20,000 people, but
Wow.
we're also focusing on wider issues like the abuse of Interpol, government overreach, universal jurisdiction, and the abuse of extradition powers as well.
Yes, I have made some notes here, and we're going to talk about some of them cases because you have been covering some really interesting cases. But first of all, let's start with a broad question. From a human rights perspective, do you think things are getting better or worse in the developed world at the moment?
I think in the developed world, or let's say in the West, I think that people are, well, I'm certainly optimistic about the way the world's heading. Now, I know I've seen a lot of comments by various members of Human Rights Watch and other sort of organizations who are very concerned about the incoming Trump administration. But I have publicly stated that actually they've been very helpful. I'm in human rights. All of my clients are looking for assistance from politicians who are invested in human rights, and we've had nothing but good results. So even Vice President JD Vance has been so helpful with one of my cases, calling him every single day and making sure that he got out of the UAE safely. And that's the kind of administration that I absolutely welcome. We've dealt with them before on various human rights issues, and we've had large success. So from that human rights in my particular field, I'm very positive on that. And I think with the larger issue of free speech, which I know that we talk about a lot, even you and I, we've covered that ad nauseum, but I think it really is that important. And that's for all of my cases, the cases that we have to deal with in Dubai and further afield. We're dealing with regimes that censor and prohibit the use of VPNs, prohibit, electronic communications that are defamatory to the government. So I'm dealing with this kind of thing all the time, and I know how important it is that free speech is upheld, the value of free speech. And so I do see that, that's probably one of the most exciting culture changes that we've seen within the past few months. I am, anticipating major change where we can actually say what we think, what we feel. We can investigate things and expose them, and that's what we want. Without that, injustice happens. We can see
Yeah.
with even Edward Snowden is a prime example of what happens when, government overreach or illegality is hidden, brushed under the carpet. And we're seeing it now in the United Kingdom, obviously, with the grooming gangs. So I think with that whole shift in culture, we're going to see positivity in so many different areas. It's no longer going to be a faux pas or wrong to criticize certain things that are happening in our countries, where before we faced persecution, we faced unfair imprisonment. That's still happening in the UK, but I think we're already seeing that that culture is not going to survive if the UK keeps jailing people for their Facebook posts or for telling the truth. They're absolutely just digging their own graves, and I think that's already done. It's just a matter of how long now it's going to take to actually regain power with free speech. And it's not just Elon Musk and X. As much as Keir Starmer and Macron would like to think so, Facebook has just joined them, Meta. So we have Mark Zuckerberg now backing that movement. That's two very powerful companies and individuals, along with the President of the United States. And that is absolutely going to change culture within Europe. It's going to change culture all over the world. And the EU will now try to fight back. The UK will try to, as much as they can, the Labour government anyway, collude with their EU allies to work out how can they censor, how can they regain control over information. They had it and they've lost it, and I don't think they're getting it back.
No, I agree with you 100% there. I mean, it is because look, I think, well, you and I, like I said, like you said, we've spoken about free speech before. And I just think that, you know, of all of the rights that we have, it is by far the most important, because if you can't talk about things and shine a light where things are going wrong, then how can you uphold any other rights? Because, you know, in the darkness you can't even see what's going on, and so you can't even have that fight and have that argument about whether things are right or wrong. So it is fundamental. What do you think? Because you mentioned that within the human rights sort of movement, there's a lot of people that are worried about Trump coming in. What is it specifically? Is it about talk of deportations and that kind of thing? What is it specifically that they're worried about with the Trump administration?
I think this is a result of, 5, 10 years of media onslaught against Trump, painting him as someone who doesn't care about human rights, doesn't care about people. He's in it for himself. He only cares about billionaires or money or whatever it is. I think it's just the leftover slander from the media onslaught against him. I think people don't really know what's behind Trump. And once they take the time to investigate what are his policies on these various issues, they'll actually see that mostly he's in favor of power for the people, and that includes human rights and standing up for issues. I mean, if we're talking about deportations, you start talking about protecting the rights of the citizens of your country. So is it wrong to send, people back to their countries who have entered illegally, who are increasing crime and risk to our children, women, and I mean, the issues that we've seen in both the UK and the US as a result of uncontrolled immigration, they're extreme, and they are changing culture. They're changing people's lives. People are no longer comfortable to let their children walk to school, and absolutely, people are at more risk of violent crime. So that's, in my view, absolutely preserving human rights of the people he should be caring about, which are the citizens first. And so I think people will find that actually Trump and the Trump administration, and if they just look to my cases and how J.D. Vance intervened and really cared, while on the other hand, we've approached various Democrat senators, asked them to do the same thing that we asked J.D. Vance to do, and they've completely ignored the calls. So when we see that stark contrast, you can see that perhaps these are people who can and will stand up for their constituents, even against their powerful allies. I mean, obviously, the UAE is one of the the strongest ally in the Middle East, strongest security partner, trade partner. But J.D. Vance used that to his advantage. I mean, having that strong relationship allows them to communicate easily, freely, to organise those meetings, and to be respected. So I think that they will use those strong relations to their advantage.
Yeah, and there'll be nowhere to no muddy water this time as well, because of course the last Trump administration, from day one, it was all about Russia and they frustrated his appointments in different departments. The thing is, this time around, he's got the House and the Senate, so I think people will be surprised because I mean, you've seen the
Mm.
videos presumably online of people hysterically crying, thinking that, that Trump's going to come in and round up gay people or trans people. But, it's that kind of real hysteria. And you think, God, they really have been got to by the left-wing press and by, the
Mm.
Biden administration and all the lies that were told. I think,
I mean,
people
they've
really,
got a lot to answer
yeah,
for, haven't they? I mean, look at, how they've changed people's opinion in this area. Look at how they lied to people during COVID and lockdowns. And
yes.
I think people need to use that because everyone can see that. That's such a clear and plain example of media manipulation on behalf of the government. So I think if people look at that, realize that they've been lied to, and trust in the media, mainstream media has, plummeted. So if they look at that, they should then go back and look at everything they've ever been told by that same media about the Trump administration and do that research. But I think it's so easy now with social media. Like all of that is coming out there and they're going to see it and they're going to experience something that they didn't expect from Trump, I would say. If they came in with those blinkers that is the indoctrination of the media, I think with their eyes open, it's going to be a completely different experience for them.
This is fantastic. This is my first interview, by the way, of 2025. And it's
Oh,
just such a different place to 2024 because 2024 was
it
about
is.
the fight coming up to try and stop Biden. Well, at that time, it was about, the start of 2024. We thought Biden was going to be running. But this is beautiful. It's like, it's such a much more optimistic I mean, there's still problems and there's dangers and everything else in the world, but it just seems like we're moving now in a much more positive direction, I think.
I think so,
Right.
and yeah,
No, go on,
I,
Radha.
I I think so, and I mean, there's still going to be those battles to fight. I mean, now that Bill Gates is no longer welcome in the United States, I think he's trying to release his genetically engineered bees in Australia, and there's still largely that leftist government all over Europe, and they're holding those same Democrat values that have just been voted out in America. So it will be interesting to see that really flip in Europe and see what's possible there.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a few interesting elections coming up. Right, Narada, let's talk about UAE. Lots of millionaires fleeing the UK at the moment. I think I read somewhere the other day that in absolute terms, there's been more millionaires moving out of the UK than there have been China. And I think a lot of them, or there's certainly a big movement that are going to Dubai. It seems to be the place to be, or people think it's the place to be. If you look at Dubai's population, 75% of it is made up of expats. I think that's around 2.7 million, somewhere around there. But what rights do you have as an expat? And I guess probably very importantly to a lot of people traveling this year to the World Cup as tourists, what kind of rights do you have in the UAE as a foreigner?
I mean, that's a good question because I think most people who go there expect that it's going to be this, very, very modern liberal society and it's great for investment. That's been deeply marketed into the United Kingdom in particular. And it offers that lifestyle, particularly to wealthy people who feel that they can show off their wealth a bit, drive a fast, flashy car, and no one's going to steal it from them, vandalize it. There's not that kind of street crime. There is behind doors and it doesn't get reported. For example, abduction, gang rape, all of these quite frightening crimes don't get reported. But for the most part, just walking around the street, you're going to be quite, safe. You're not going to be worried like they might be in the UK. Um, However, being wealthy in Dubai makes you a target, and it's usually wealthy people who run into trouble there. And that's because people want to extort them out of their money. So they're jealous, and not only that, wealthy people are more likely to open a business there, more likely to have colleagues, and any falling out or any issue with the business, or a local Emirati just doesn't like you for whatever reason and wants to steal your whole business. They fabricate a charge against you, take it to the police, and the police will prosecute whether or not there's evidence. They do not care about evidentiary requirements. Assets can be frozen and stolen very quickly, and often in conjunction with that, a criminal allegation is made in order to put the victim behind bars so that they can't take a civil case to recover whatever's been taken from them. Um, British expats in the UAE, if going against powerful local people, they are absolutely not going to be given a fair trial. We're still dealing with issues like forced confessions, arbitrary detention, discrimination, and if the claimant or the accuser is an Emirati, you're just not going to win. So you have those issues, and of course, we've seen time and time again how easy it is to violate the law there, whether you intend to or not. Simple communications on a telephone, whether it's WhatsApp, email, or something on social media, are largely against the law. And if you say something that's considered rude by the recipient, they can take a case against you and you'll be prosecuted and potentially jailed for years.
Yeah, and I have made a note of some cases that I do want to talk about. But before we do that, is there a press at all in Dubai? How do things get communicated to the population in the UAE?
There's government-controlled media in the UAE, and the national newspaper is the central one. So anything in that paper basically needs government approval. And there used to be a more liberal media. They'd even report, on some of my cases, which I found surprising. But then the government clamped down on that, and they have a very, very low freedom of press index. Most journalists who reside there, if they want to report on anything controversial, they'll do so after they've left the country and never intend to return. So, and they're very nervous. They're very nervous if they say the wrong thing, they would be absolutely in violation of local laws.
Would you say that? I mean, I don't want to go because my wife, she is absolutely against going there because of the imbalance of rights between women and men. But so I'm not going to go there. But what would your advice to me be, given the fact that I don't keep my mouth shut about anything?
I mean that's difficult when people want to visit Dubai. If it's their first time, I would say that 99.9% of them would already be in violation of the law simply through their social media posts. And we've actually had British nationals who have been arrested there based on social media posts made from within the United Kingdom 5 years before even ever thinking about traveling to Dubai. So you're liable or, criminally liable for any social media posts made outside of the UAE that can be deemed offensive in the UAE. So you would have to look at your entire history. And I'm sure they would find things in there that they'd want to arrest you for, James. I don't think
Well,
they would. But if someone took a disliking to you, I can't imagine it. But if someone did, or you had an enemy or a dispute with a landlord or a hotel owner or something like that, and they wanted to take vengeance on you, they will go and look through your social media history, find something that could be offensive, and they'll report it to the police, and the police will at that point prosecute. So it's largely based on whether someone brings it to their attention.
yeah, that's the impression I got when I was going through some of these cases. And let's talk about some of those. There are some very serious ones, like the CEO of United Cement Group, which we'll talk about in a moment. But there are some others as well, which kind of raise the eyebrow because you just think, what? Like Craig Ballantyne, he's from Northern Ireland, and he got arrested for a Google review, didn't he?
Yeah, that is another issue for foreigners, tourists in particular. We've had a number of arrests for online reviews or even complaining to customer service on the telephone. Those complaints were reported to police and they were arrested. So Craig was arrested for an online Google review that he actually made from Northern Ireland. He didn't make it in the UAE. And then after making that Google review, he travelled to Dubai, and there was a case against him waiting for when he arrived. And I think, it's so irresponsible of the UAE to not make a law that restricts businesses from even soliciting reviews. If they can't handle anything that's under 5 stars, then they shouldn't be allowed to ask for them, because it's just asking for trouble.
Yeah, I mean that really did raise an eyebrow. And then, of course, a really important one, Marcus Fakana, I think that's how you pronounce his name. Tell us about that case, because it really is quite shocking, this one.
Yeah. Marcus has been in prison now for over a week. He turned himself in to serve a 1-year sentence for having sex with someone who was 1 month away from being 18. He's 18. So had they met 1 month later, had he been on holidays 1 month later, it wouldn't have been a crime. The girl's mother reported him from England. If she'd reported the incident in Dubai, then the girl probably would have been arrested as well, because it's a crime for her also to have sex under the age of 18. So we haven't spoken to him for a week. I spoke to him at the moment he was arrested, and very brave, obviously. And I think, so many people support him and just feel that whether or not it's illegal, it just seems ludicrous to put someone, an 18-year-old, in prison for consensual sex with someone who's in his own school year, who was a tourist on holiday, and who didn't intend to cause any offence or didn't intend to break the law. In fact, he didn't even know she was under 18. He thought she was 18. They appeared the same age, same school level, all of that. And it's just not something an 18-year-old would check on in that moment. You have a holiday romance, you're not going to check the law. Also, when you're traveling with your parents, you tend to be more submissive to them and expect them to take care of everything. It's not like he was traveling independently. So I do have absolute sympathy for him. I think it was abhorrent that he was reported from the UK for this. And presumably they were aware that it would be taken very seriously by Dubai authorities, or otherwise why would you report it to the police? So he was in solitary for a week, and I managed to speak to a French father who called on his own son's case. His son is in the prison with Marcus, so it was nice to get that assurance that Marcus is talking to someone and he's not completely alone right now. We have been getting a lot of offers to help from members of the House of Lords and various other people, despite David Lammy's sort of resistance to assist, which was really surprising.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask about, because David Lammy being obviously the UK Foreign Secretary, I mean, this, given the fact that he's so young, being put in a foreign jail, and like you said, really very, very disproportionate, I think, use of punishment. Has David Lammy got involved at all? What's been his contribution?
I mean, his contribution, as far as I can see to date, has been telling Marcus that he can't represent him as Foreign Secretary, which is absolutely ridiculous. He said it was a conflict of interest because he can't be MP and Foreign Secretary. Marcus said, that's fine. I want you as Foreign Secretary then. I don't need you as MP, because the sole job of the MP in these cases is for them to raise it, really, to the Foreign Secretary, to push them to diplomatically intervene.
So he removed something. Can I just, so David Lammy, his MP in the UK then?
Yes.
So he's his MP and he's Foreign Secretary, and he's...
Yes.
So he's essentially, it sounds like he's refused really to get involved.
Well, if he's removed himself as Foreign Secretary, which he said he has, for this case only, which is amazing because it should be the one he cares about, being his constituent, but he's removed himself as Foreign Secretary, left himself in there as MP, but is incapable of doing something because the MP has no Foreign Secretary to engage with. Now, he claims to the family that there are, discussions happening, but that's what they all say. And we knew with JD Vance those discussions were happening because he was on the phone every day. And David Lammy has not contacted the family, and they've hassled him in the past couple of days, and we hope to get a response. But it's just incredible because he is in the perfect position to represent Marcus, to try to get him a pardon or his sentence commuted. And he's just totally abandoned him. So that's the kind of representation that I criticise in other countries. I didn't expect it from David Lammy when he's Marcus's MP, and for such a high-profile case.
And David Lammy hasn't, I think you said there, just to confirm, he hasn't even met with the family.
He hasn't met with the family, and he hasn't contacted them since, I think, before Christmas. So they're following him up now, but perhaps he's busy on the grooming gang issues in the UK. And he's not acting as foreign secretary, so he's he's given himself a free pass to do nothing essentially, and he doesn't seem to care about the criticism.
That's shocking. That really is shocking. I really do feel for him. He's 18. Is he still now, or is he? Yeah.
Yeah, he's still 18. He's spent New Year's in isolation. He's going to spend a birthday in prison at this stage, and we don't have the UK advocating for a pardon even from Sheikh Mohammed Al Maktoum, the ruler of Dubai. Nothing, as far as we can see, has been done. And when you see countries like Ireland recently with Tory Tui and their other constituents really get involved and do great things, and I've seen Canada, I've worked with Canada, the US on several occasions, even Malaysia sent their foreign secretary over to the UAE to have a meeting with their counterpart, and they brought their citizen home on the same flight with them. So when you see Malaysia, Canada, Ireland doing better than the UK, despite the UK being in a more powerful diplomatic position, it says a lot about, I mean, if David Lammy can't represent young 18-year-old Marcus with its ally, the UAE, how the hell can he do his job in other more important areas? How can he represent Britain and the people of Britain on the world stage?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of questions about this Labour government. I think people that are watching this will be shocked, to be frank, about that particular story. Let's talk about the CEO of United Cement Group. I'll try and pronounce his name. I think it's Ulugbek Shadmanov. Is that correct?
That's about right. I'll get Ulugbek. Yes, Ulugbek. I mean, that's an interesting case, obviously. Surprising. I think what's basically happened is he was over in the UAE on a golden visa. He's a very wealthy cement factory. I think he has 8 factories and 7,500 employees. He's from Uzbekistan, but he was living in the UAE under the golden visa, looking to expand his investments and so on. He also thought, given the corruption that is rife in Uzbekistan, that he would be safer in the UAE. However, he was in a meeting with his US attorney when around a dozen Secret Service agents turned up with their military gear on, surrounded him, put him on the ground, handcuffed him and the attorneys as well, the Americans, and took him away. They told the Americans to just go home and be quiet, don't mention this again. And they never heard from him. So he was taken into some secret detention facility in Dubai, and the local attorneys found out that Uzbekistan wanted to extradite him. So basically, they wanted to extradite him so that they could put pressure on him, force him to sign over all of his assets, all of his money. That's all it's about, just getting his assets. So Dubai extradited him overnight, basically, no legal proceeding. It's very surprising. It's very unusual. They have done it before, but I thought that perhaps they would stop doing that. They've been promoting that they're following more of a rule of law. They've been telling countries like Ireland they won't extradite Kinahan without, the Kinahan gang members without proper legal defense proceedings. They have to go to trial and will decide whether to or not. They've also had South Africa lobbying them to extradite the Gupta brothers, which are, very wanted in South Africa, and they have gone through hell trying to extradite the Gupta brothers, who were afforded the right to a trial. But I mean, this happened overnight without a hearing whatsoever. And then in my research, because I only got this case 48 hours ago, so in my research, I see that the person who is essentially, you would say, an oligarch, I suppose, in terms of Uzbekistan, a very powerful business owner who wants to take over the ceramics company. And then on my investigation, I see that he hires an American lobbyist, pays them $3 million in an attempt to slander my client. And then I see Mike Pompeo, former Secretary of State, and the former Energy Secretary in the US, sitting on boards of this man's companies. And, there's very close ties. And I know for a fact those people also, this lobbyist also represents the UAE as a lobbyist in the United States. And then you have Mike Pompeo with his very strong ties within the UAE. And I should clarify, they're not Trump ties, they're his personal endeavors that he's essentially made as a private individual, strengthening those personal relationships. And I hope that there hasn't been any US involvement or approval, any US citizens involved in promoting extrajudicial extradition, because that's what it is. It's illegal extradition. And if we don't call this out, regardless of the nationality of those involved, if we don't call out extraditing someone without a trial, we're going to see it in other countries as well. Uzbekistan just joined the BRICS treaty, and just on the 1st of January, and then a few days later, they get an extradition without a trial. It's very concerning from that point of view. If the UAE is willing to do it for him, then other people who might be targeted politically, and we've had quite a few of them. We've had a US citizen who was targeted by Egypt for posts that he'd made on YouTube. They said it was against the government of Egypt, and they wanted to extradite him from the UAE, even though he was only visiting as an American citizen. Now, they didn't extradite the American citizen, but I think if we start to see a pattern or start to see even one extradition as we have, that means everyone is unsafe. If you can't visit a country and be safe that you are going to get legal process if another country wants to extradite you, we're in a very dire situation. What if, you're a Ukrainian or a Russian and you go to the UAE and one of those countries wants to extradite you? Is the UAE just going to hand them over? And so that's something that we're really looking into at the moment as well, and what we can do to get those countries to stop doing that, period, like never again.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully the incoming Trump administration will change the sort of the environment, the context around that. Obviously, as you said, you've only just taken this case a couple of days ago, so early days for you. What about, because I was going through your X account this morning just to try and see what we could talk about, and I saw really interesting. You took a really interesting angle on the UK grooming gangs. So let's talk about that. What are your thoughts about what is going on in the UK at the moment? I think the comment I'm talking about is with regards to Sir Keir Starmer.
I mean, Keir Starmer is obviously, as we can see, I think it's plain sight. Who wouldn't want a national inquiry into something so serious? Okay, they can argue that it's something that's been around and known for quite a long time, but it hasn't been known as it is being, as people are coming to know it now. And Elon Musk highlighting that forces the issue up, and people are angry because it was never dealt with. There was no accountability. It's a bit like Fauci, potentially being pardoned. If there's no accountability, people are very angry. They want that inquiry. Absolutely. I think anyone who's saying no to that inquiry are really just slapping the face of the British citizens. It is terrible. And then, of course, we've got the Tommy Robinson issue. Yes, he's been advocating for this publicly for a long time, and we're seeing that little tiff, I suppose, between Nigel Farage and Elon Musk, and the media trying to jump on that and amplify it. I mean, it's their dream. They've been trying to, promote an argument between Elon Musk and Trump That's their
Yeah,
strategy. They're
yeah.
hoping they can get them to have an argument. And when they saw Nigel and Elon having a tiff, that they could jump on that and maybe amplify it. I think that Elon Musk, well, I think that Nigel Farage was wrong to say what he did say about Elon Musk, which is that he was going to educate him, or that he was, implying that Elon Musk was naive. And I can see that Elon has deeply researched these issues. He's not just read the judgments. As Piers Morgan has, apparently just reading the judge's transcript at the end. You have to read the whole trial transcript. You have to see the whole thing to know whether justice has been done in court proceedings. You cannot just read the summary at the
Yeah,
end.
sure.
And I mean, Nigel should know that. He's seen what's happened in the US with Trump. He's seen the weaponization of the judiciary. He knows that there is two-tier here. He knows there is two-tier enforcement. And there is absolutely an increased politicization of the UK judiciary. And I think that Elon Musk is right to call that out. And I don't think that Nigel Farage has caught on to that culture shift. I think he's still thinking that he has to appease everyone. He has to be that respectable person. He needs the Muslim vote. Yes, he might do. But if you look at Trump, yes, he got quite a bit of Muslim vote. He got quite a bit of, the black vote, the Latino vote. You don't need to alienate people like Tommy Robinson in order to gain support from those constituents. And I think that's what he did. And I think it was not the right move to make. It would have been quite easy for him to acknowledge that there was politicization, there was a political
Well, it was the
movement
Attorney
against
General,
Tommy.
wasn't it? It's actually a political appointment which brought
Yes,
the case against Tommy. So it was a political decision.
it was a political decision. But also, Tommy has suffered quite a significant amount of pressure coming from law enforcement in the UK, unfair pressure as well. He has been targeted by law enforcement. And I mean, if you look at the grooming gang saga, they're saying that fathers were targeted when trying to rescue their daughters, or that, if you spoke up about it, if you published something, you were being told to be quiet, to delete that, to retract it. And even, I mean, today on X, I saw someone say that they were asked just recently by the
Sammy
police.
Woodhouse. Sammy Woodhouse.
Sammy,
Yeah.
yes.
She had the police call her last night to ask her to delete certain posts. Yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, I've, like everyone else, I think for years they've looked at Tommy because of what they've heard in the press. They've made up in their minds on what kind of, and look, I think there are videos of him and you think, oh, what kind of character is he? But for example, I've been quite surprised because Nigel, for example, brought up about mortgage fraud. And I later watched a video with Tommy and God, I've got a name.
Jordan Peterson was
Yeah, that's the one. I
Yeah,
watched an
yeah,
interview with Jordan Peterson where he explains what that actually was. And
yes.
it's like, oh my God, half the
I
people I
know.
knew got a house back in the day,
Yeah,
self-certification, where they I mean, that was the whole point of having that rule that you could self-certify is that, you
absolutely.
could make out that you were earning more than everybody did it. So, and he wasn't actually the one that did that. That was his, I think it was brother or brother-in-law, that
Yes.
did it. And he paid back the loan. There was no fraud, no, no sort of mortgage arrears or anything like that. So yeah, incredible when you actually learn what's behind it.
I think people should watch that Jordan Peterson interview. I think it was thorough, but not too long. And I think it really did dive into the issues very well. And I think Tommy explained his position well and what's happened to him. And of course, the movie that was banned, I think that people should see that because, I mean, there is question over the procedures, the British court procedures that declined him the opportunity to present witnesses that may have changed the outcome of the case. And so I think that's very important before people judge him. And I think Nigel Farage didn't need to throw him under a
Yeah.
bus, even if he
Yeah.
does have those opinions. And I think Piers as well, Piers Morgan. I mean, Elon Musk saying Pierce's brain, I think, what did he say, needs to be rebooted or something like that, needs a software update. And I think he hasn't caught on either. I think he was so arrogant about it that he'd read all of the details of the case. I know the case, but he hadn't. He'd read the judge's final judgment, not the details, not the process, the
Yes.
procedure. And that's so important.
I mean, with Nigel, I think it's political. What he's trying to do is send out a message that, you know, people have been calling us and me far right, but actually we're not. Because look at us,
Mm.
we're miles away and we're not having anything to do with Tommy. He's using Tommy as a political footballer. I personally think, which is going to
Mm.
backfire, I think, in the end. Now, the other thing that I thought was interesting, your view on or your comments on the grooming gangs was about Keir Starmer when he was head of the CPS
Mm.
and what he was doing at the time, aka Assange and whatever. Just
Well,
explain
I mean,
what
that's
you.
it. Yes, I mean, look, we had political prisoner Julian Assange, and we had Keir Starmer visiting the United States on a regular basis to discuss how they can possibly extradite Julian Assange. We had Keir Starmer facilitate the rape allegations coming from Sweden, which actually caused him to have to leave the embassy in the end, and caused him to be locked up in Belmarsh for as long as he was. So Keir Starmer was largely focused on satisfying intelligence agencies in the United States and doing whatever he could to surreptitiously extradite Julian Assange without that fair process, using the Sweden rape allegations, inviting those interviews from Sweden while ignoring everything that was happening in the United Kingdom, while failing to
Yeah.
prosecute people for violent crimes. He cared about Julian Assange, who exposed crimes. That at the
Really
end of the day,
interesting, isn't it?
yeah.
The reason I brought that up, and I is because I think it really does. Those two facts: the fact that he was at the time trying to extradite Julian Assange, a journalist who we know was trying to expose the crimes of governments in the West, whilst
Mm.
ignoring the plight of young British girls who are being abused and raped up and down the country. There's definitely been a cover
Mm.
up there. I think that does say an awful lot about the priorities, I think, of the current Prime Minister of the UK.
Mm. Yes.
Definitely.
I mean, this is one
Rada,
of the I think one of the core reasons I was saying do not vote for Keir Starmer because of what he did with Julian Assange there. It was so backhanded, it was so wrong, and I don't think many people know about it. It was a long time ago. It doesn't get the press coverage that it should. But he went against, he went against what is due process, extraditing someone who's not a US citizen, who didn't commit a crime in the US, who should never have even been considered for extradition, and locked him up for years. I mean, do you want someone like that who has zero empathy for the people and what the people want in charge of the country? I don't think so.
yeah, fantastic. Amen to all of that. Thank you so much, Rada Sterling, CEO of Detained in Dubai. Thank you for coming back on the Freeman Report.
Well, great to see you, James. Thank you.
Thank you.